especially during the question and answer session. And you will all be automatically muted until it is, you have the opportunity to be asked a question. We are, of course, part of the Mommy to Be program, which is a joint initiative between Qatar Reads and the Qatar National Library. This program is focusing on the journey of motherhood along with their spouses and their children, and focusing on creating a better network of all aspects, from mental health to nutrition to physical activity, and just having a community of mommies. So we have the Parenting Book Club back here today. We have, of course, Hind Al Khalifi, our moderator, the manager and children of young adults at QNL. We're also joined by our speaker, Catherine Hill, who is the UK Director of Care for the Family, and she is the author of today's book, which is A Mind of Their Own, Building Your Child's Emotional Well-Being in a Post-Pandemic World. Also joining us today as a guest speaker is Dr. Felice Wad, the Division Chief of Women's Mental Health for the Department of Psychiatry at Sidra Medicine. And without further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Hind to start our session off.
Hi everyone, it's really a pleasure to be here today with all of you, as well as with Catherine Hill, who has written this beautifully illustrated book with amazing examples and very close to heart. But before we start our conversation, I wanted the video which Catherine had shared with us to be displayed, please. It's a short video.
Some of the things that worry me are my upcoming A-level exams and moving away to uni next year.
I worry that my Lego will get smashed when someone's walking in my room.
I worry about not being the best version of myself, things not being perfect, whether people like me, whether I like me.
One thing I worry about is like my future aspirations, what I'm going to do when I'm older, and what I'm going to do with my life, to be honest.
One thing I worry about is school, like my maths homework.
One of my biggest worries is about the climate crisis and how maybe people aren't doing enough that seems to be able to stop it and sort it out.
What worries me is like the future and not being in control.
I'm worried about my pets dying, Tim and Oriole. They're only little dwarf hamsters, so they don't last that long, and they're my first pets.
I worry about when I jump, Daddy won't catch me.
I worry about my scary dreams.
What might happen in the future.
So, Catherine, I wanted to start the conversation about how mental health has taken center stage since last year, and really wanted to ask what inspired you to write a book on mental health for children?
Oh, well, Hind, thank you so very much. And can I just say what a privilege it is to speak to you all this afternoon on this subject. It's so great that you are here, and I'm really pleased to be part of this. But yes, I think across the world, we had noticed, and some of that's quite poignantly illustrated by many of those children's answers. We just got a random group of children, asked them what things they worried about. That was their replies. And certainly where I'm based in the UK, but I think worldwide, we've been noticing that there's been a real increase in children's anxiety levels and poor mental well-being of all ages. And I then decided, because of that, the charity I work for, we want to strengthen family life. And as part of that, I really wanted to write a book that would equip parents to build strong emotional well-being in their children. So in the same way that we know how to strengthen our children physically. So we know that we get them to eat their vegetables, and we limit sugar, and we limit screen time, and all those things, teach them to cross the road. There's things that we can do to help them grow emotionally. So I was all set to write the book. And then 2020 came, and the pandemic, and that has just made things so much worse for family life. I often think it's like the pandemic has put a magnifying glass on our families, and some good things have been strengthened, but by and large, things have got a lot worse. And so the book was even more timely.
Definitely. And we've heard the word resilience continuously across our navigation of COVID-19 and the drastic changes that took place in the home and our professional lives. Can you really actually explain what the word resilience means, and what does it look like for children, and how can we actually build it as parents?
Gosh, really good question. So yeah, in this book, every chapter deals with a specific aspect of something that we can do as parents, right in the everyday ups and downs of family life, to build emotional well-being. And you're so right, a real thread throughout the book is how we build resilience. And it's a term that we hear spoken about a lot. The scientific definition is all about a substance going back to its original shape after it's been disturbed. But actually, there's been some new definitions of resilience. And so instead of bouncing back, we talk now about resilience meaning bouncing forward. So actually, not just after something traumatic has happened, not just going back to where we were, but actually learning from it and being strengthened by it. And that's a tough one, I think, because as parents, we don't want our children to go through difficult things. We'd all love life to be straightforward and easy for them. But the truth is, it's actually in those tough times that their character and that resilience is formed. And there's a lovely, one of the little conversations I put in the book. It's actually the doctor who wrote a foreword for the book. And he was telling me about a conversation he had with his 7-year-old son. And it went something like this. The son came back from school and said, "Daddy, we learned about resilience in school today." And he said, "Oh, did you? What did you learn?" And the little boy said, "That it means bouncing back." And then he said, "What's bouncing back?" And his son said, "I don't know. We haven't learned that bit yet." And he said that it was such a good example that you can learn the theory, and at school it's really important that you do, but it's only in actually experiencing those knocks in life, little ones right through to teenage years and beyond, that we learn how to overcome them and to bounce forward. And so really, many of the chapters in the book are different ways that we can build that really important quality in our children's lives.
Yeah, I love the way you say bouncing forward, because I think as parents, we automatically jump in to dilute strong feelings, and we tell our children, it's okay, don't make a big deal, don't be sad, don't be cry. But what I really like about this book and appreciate is that you tell us we shouldn't be doing that, actually, that we should hold the space for our children's emotions. So can you just explain a little bit more about why it's important to hold space for our children's emotions and respect that they can be sad, they can be angry, they can feel anxious? And as parents, what can we do to help them overcome these feelings and bounce forward, as you say?
Yes, so I don't know if anyone has heard of the term helicopter parents, but helicopter parents are parents that swoop in at a moment's notice to prevent their children from going through difficulty, sort of the rotor blades whirring round. And I have got 4 children, they're grown now, but I would have been that helicopter parent because I hated them going through difficult times. And so I'll definitely speak about the emotion in a second, but I remember many times driving across the town where we live to deliver forgotten sports kit or the ingredients for a cookery lesson or something to our children because I didn't want them to have to go through the tough times. I wanted to rescue them. But you know, the times when I let them try and work that out for themselves, they generally were okay. They were yet to miss a match because they didn't have their football boots. They borrowed them or they found a way around the problem. So it's about helping, standing back as appropriate. And of course, when they're little, we're going to want to help them more than as they get older. But standing back and allowing them sometimes to find the solutions. And as Hind has just said, in relation to emotions, that's again really important. And it's so easy, particularly as mums, I think, we see them crying. We say, oh, don't cry, it's all right. Just put a plaster on it or whatever. But actually part of them learning to recognize emotions and to understand the highs and the lows, to feel the joy and the laughter and the excitement, but also the disappointment and the pain. That's part of life. And if we can help them do that when they're little, they'll be so much better prepared to be able to do that as adults, because that's about being emotionally healthy. It's about being able to look the disappointments of life in the eye and just keep moving forward.
Yeah. You mentioned in the book the importance of taking care of ourselves as parents, and our mental health is almost a reflection of the mental health our children will have. So I wanted to ask Dr. Phyllis, who works at Sidra and takes care of pregnant women and women who just recently delivered. Can you tell us a little bit about what Sidra does to support mothers through this difficult but exciting journey of motherhood?
Yes, of course I can. We what is called a multidisciplinary team, Arabic speaking, some other languages also. And what we do is women can refer to our clinic through various means. They can self-refer or be referred through their doctors or community health. And we make an appointment to sit down with the woman and her husband or her other family member to understand what the difficulty is. And after doing that, we then give the woman feedback as to what we think the difficulties are that she's having and what we would recommend as the best way to help them. That is counselling or therapy. Some women need medications. Sometimes we do marriage therapy, or we help women to connect with their babies.
We've just displayed for you also, everybody who's in this program, the details of how to reach Sidra and their experts in mental health. So Dr. Phyllis, maybe can you give us an idea of what types of difficulties are being faced by women nowadays, or the women that end up in your clinics and talking to your doctors?
Yes, I can. So anxiety is very common for pregnant women and also women after having a baby. And this is a worldwide issue. And interestingly, but not surprisingly, it has become worse with the COVID pandemic. The other common issue is depression. And at least 1 in 10, maybe 1 in 5 to 1 in 10 women will have some symptoms of depression or anxiety during pregnancy and after having a baby.
And Dr. Phyllis, how do you think a woman could realize that she might be facing mental issues? I think we talk about it a lot, but when it comes to reflecting on ourselves, we might not realize that we might be suffering, or we think what we're experiencing is very normal. So are there like a few alarming bells that we could share with our audience?
Of course, of course. One of the most helpful warning bells is when a woman might say to me, you know, I was really wanting to have a baby, and I imagined that when I was pregnant, I would feel really excited. But you know what? I'm actually not enjoying this pregnancy at all. I'm feeling quite scared and worried. Or after having a baby, a woman may expect to be really enjoying and connected with her baby, and this is not her experience. And these are other symptoms that a woman can experience. Then there are the more obvious symptoms of anxiety and depression, such as crying, not enjoying things, feeling irritable, sometimes irritable with husbands, irritable with other children, worrying about things. Pregnant women who are really worried about having a baby and what will happen at delivery. Or mothers who are really scared that their baby might stop breathing and feel like they have to stay awake, checking their baby at night and so are unable to sleep. Being off their food, no appetite, lacking energy, difficulty sleeping. Now you might say to me, well, all mothers have trouble sleeping, their baby wakes. But mothers with this difficulty wake for their baby, feed and settle their baby, and then their baby is asleep, but they find that they can't get to sleep. All of these are fairly common symptoms that we see.
And doctor, when a mother does reach your office and gets the type of support she needs, when do mothers start to feel better, at least, or feel like they're recovering from what they were feeling?
To be honest, often a woman will say to us when we finish our first appointment, I feel better already. And we haven't done anything fancy, but what we have done is listen. And many women feel ashamed of how they feel. And so just having someone listen and understand and then explain to them a little bit that no, there's not something wrong with them. They're actually depressed or anxious and help is available. That in itself can make a big difference.
Coming back to you, Catherine, you talk a lot about in the book about how we could help our children articulate their feelings. And as adults, sometimes we struggle with really putting a word on how we feel. So I'm sure it's even harder for children. So can you just talk to our audience about a few ways that we could help our children kind of recognize how they're feeling?
Absolutely. So as adults, as you say, Heidi, it's very difficult sometimes for us to express our emotions. So it's even harder for our little ones who maybe don't have the vocabulary for it. And so we can begin where they're at. So they probably know what it means to be happy or excited. So maybe there's something that they're really looking forward to. And we can talk to them about that. How does that make you feel? And help them develop, almost like developing a muscle, to describe, oh, I am feeling happy, or I'm feeling excited, or whatever. Children often feel things physically, so that sensation of, they might call it butterflies in their tummy if they're a bit nervous about something. And we can get them to try and describe what it feels like and then help them say, well, maybe it's because you're a little bit worried about whatever it is. So begin just by labeling emotions and helping them make that connection. And so important is that we can model that ourselves. And so if we're feeling irritable or upset, maybe we've had a difficult day for whatever reason, just articulating that to our children and saying, Mummy's feeling a bit anxious today about whatever it is, or I had a difficult day in this situation at work or whatever, and then saying that. And in the book, there's lots of really practical ideas of things that we can do with our children. At the end of every chapter, there's activities, but there's also action points, and then an activity that you can do. And one I suggest for this one was to make a feelings thermometer. So if you've got, super happy right at the top and then feeling really, really sad at the bottom. And so if something happens, you can say, well, where would it be? Where would it be on this thermometer? Are you feeling really sad or just a little bit sad? And it's gradually introducing this into everyday family life, making it part of our vocabulary, which can be hard for us as well if we've not been used to addressing our emotions and speaking about them. But just linking with the conversation just then with Dr. Felice, our children pick their cue from us. They absorb so much from us, and we really are role models in how we do all these things. And so one example I often say is, we think they're not listening to us. We ask them to hang their coat up on the peg in the hall or whatever, and we come in and we've told them so many times to do it, and this coat is still on the floor, and we think they're not listening. But the truth is, they don't miss a thing. And they notice our actions and our reactions and how we deal with our emotions and our anxiety. And that will be one of the best things that we can do for our children, is to look after our own emotional well-being and try and model that in a healthy way.
Definitely. I wanted to show our viewers today what you mean when you mention the action points at the end of each chapter. So for example, this is a chapter that explains to us parents that it's okay for our children to be ordinary, and that we should, on the contrary, feel very proud if they're being themselves and not trying to be something that we want them to be. So then you have, hopefully this is clear, some action points and some really practical and easy examples for us to honor that, how we can make them feel that it's okay to be ordinary. I would like to ask if the audience has any questions for Dr. Phyllis or Catherine related to the book or related to the sessions offered at Sidra. Feel free to type them in the chat, and I'll be able to call your name if you'd like to speak, or I could just read your question. In the meantime, is it possible, please, to display poll number 2? So someone is asking, how can we order the book? In the meantime, one poll has just come up. We would like to know, have you ever been concerned that your child might have any mental health difficulties? Yes, as a parent, you knew that they've experienced something. No, or you're actually not sure. We would like to understand how relevant this topic is to our audience today. We'll give the poll a few more seconds. So the vast majority of our audience actually do agree that they've been concerned that their child might have some mental health difficulties. I mean, as you said, especially with COVID, everything seemed to have gotten magnified very quickly in a very confined space with very limited options. And as parents and as our children, we all struggled kind of to share space, no boundaries, the pressure of school, the pressure of work. So I would like the audience, if anybody would like to share a personal experience or a remedial solution that they found very useful to navigate this. Alhamdulillah, now things are opening up, so the pressure of COVID seems to be lessening. Hopefully that will stay. So someone is saying, yes, my child is very anxious, especially while going outside for long distances. Someone asks, you mentioned, Mrs. Hill, you mentioned that in 2020, pandemic made things worse. Do you agree that the pandemic only revealed the hidden negativities and put a spotlight on what originally was wrong? I'm assuming what's wrong with the family unit, right? Or society in general. Good question.
That's an excellent question. I think definitely where there were already issues, where things were near the fault line already, it has just made it, it's brought them into the open, and children that were already anxious have probably feel even more anxious. And certainly most of the research and the statistics show that the most vulnerable children have fared the worst. They have really struggled. But I also think that there are many children, and these are from parents who have contacted us at Care for the Family, and from some early research coming out, who are actually, to all intents and purposes, seem to be doing just fine. But this has just really eaten away at them, and it's been such an unusual year. I think particularly for our older children, for whom they're trying to establish their identity away from us, their parents, and the way that they do that best is through their peers, and they've not been able to see friends. And all the support structures have been taken away. So I do think it has brought stuff out that was already there. But I think some children who seem to be fine have also really, really struggled. But the good news, I think, is that I wouldn't want us to be too quick to medicalize feelings of frustration and boredom and just low-level anxiety. Obviously, we need to be really listening to our children and finding out what's going on for them and what are the things that are really concerning them. But some of this is normal reactions to a very abnormal situation. And the book is really a message of hope, because with the right support, many of our children are going to come through this just fine and even stronger for it. And just for parents to know that if they are concerned, to seek help, because that's also really important. But in terms of coming out of the pandemic, what has been interesting for us to find is that many parents thought going into the pandemic was difficult, but coming out of it, they found even harder to help their children. And I was speaking to a psychologist the other day, and she said that the way our adult brains are wired, we know what pre-pandemic looked like. We knew what was happening in the pandemic, and in some way we can visualize a new normal, how life is going to be. But for our children, they haven't got that maturity. And for them, it's just all change and upheaval and disruption. So it's no surprise they're struggling.
And there's some COVID babies as well. So they don't know what pre-COVID looked like, you know?
Absolutely. So I have 3 little grandchildren, and 2 of those are COVID babies. And I took them where we live, there's a little park with swings. And I thought, gosh, people were wearing masks and they've never known any different. And they were looking at the other children because they hadn't had any other contact. So I think they just need help. All these ages need help to gradually help our children out into a new normal. But we are the best place to do it as their parents.
Yeah. There's another question here, struggles with about electronic devices because of lack of social interactions. And I know you actually have a book, Left to Their Own Devices, if I'm not mistaken, that talks about healthy usage of electronics and how as parents we could meet our children midway. So can you talk a little bit about, as parents, what our stance should be when it comes to electronic use during this time? Although I've come to realize that it was kind of the gateway for them to interact with their friends by playing games. And for me as a parent, I felt like I've lessened my strictness towards electronic usage during COVID because it saved us as a family as well.
I think that is so true. So the whole issue of parents and screens has been one of the issues that we have been asked about a lot at Care for the Family. And I wrote the book, Left to Their Own Devices, Confident Parenting in an Age of Screens, in response to that. But again, this has all changed in the past year. So I think the thing to bear in mind is that as parents, we're not bringing up children, we're not bringing up teenagers. Our goal is to bring up adults who are able to make good choices themselves. So in this whole area of screen time and what they're looking at on screens, that's our aim, to put obviously all the good filters and parental controls in place, but to prepare our children for the time when we're not there at their shoulder so they can make good choices. But I think a year ago, a lot of us were concerned about screen time. But exactly as you say, Hind, this year has been a lifesaver for them because it's been the way that we've been able to stay in touch with grandparents and friends and family. And so I think it's not so much now the time on screens, but what is it that they're actually doing on those screens? And I talk about content. So what is it that they're looking at? Contact. Who is it that they are talking to? And conduct, how are they behaving? So the whole issues of bullying and the selfie culture, which again feeds into their self-esteem. And one really good practical idea to do in relation to screens is to get the whole family together and to agree what your ground rules are. And do you allow screens in the bedroom or not? A good idea would be to charge phones in a different room at night, that sort of thing, and agree it, but the parents agree it as well. And even little ones have a say. And some people have, yes, you can, ask us first, don't even think about it, and all according to age. But people have found that it's called a media agreement, family media agreement, and you can put anything in it but works for your family in line with your family values. And people have had to rejig that during COVID because it's changed so much and we've been doing so much more on screens. But actually that's a really good tool to feel that you're on the front foot in helping them make those wise choices.
Definitely. There's a question I think Dr. Phyllis might be better to answer. Someone is saying, for a parent facing mental health issues, I suppose, what is your recommendation to decrease the opportunity to transfer it to their children?
Okay, I think, what is most important is to actually get treatment and help yourself. That is very important and the most important thing. If you are in a stage, for example, and you're extremely unwell, for example, even if you had to go to hospital for treatment, it is very important that the child knows other members of the family and is introduced to them, like husband, grandparents, and also comes to visit you with a parent in hospital. This doesn't happen very often at all, but it is so important for babies to get to know their mum, and mums can get treated. But if that's taking a bit of time, the rest of the family can support the baby. What is important is that a little one is responded to lovingly in the moment of the day. That is the most important thing.
Catherine, in your book, you mentioned that it takes a village to raise a child. So that might be connected to what Dr. Phyllis is saying. So if a mother does feel like she's not fully equipped to be there for her child, this is when other family members or friends should step into the picture. And there's actually a lot of benefit for diluting, let's say, parenting across trusted adults. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
Yeah, it's a lovely little proverb that it takes a village to raise a child. And most of us, I think, as parents, breathe a sigh of relief to know that, because it's too hard to do this on our own. And we all need support. And so that particular chapter is about being intentional, about the kind of people that we encourage to speak into our children's lives and also to help us. And it might be in a school situation, it might be a teacher, it might be a youth leader, all kinds of different people, but particularly grandparents and other trusted family members who can be there and help us in this task of parenting. One of our boys met up with a slightly older boy in the youth club, one of the leaders there, and he used to just go out with him just for a drink after school, and they talked about football, and they talked about friendships at school, but those key conversations really helped put a foundation in that particular son's life. And so it's great, and particularly in the older years. I don't know how many of the people on this call have teenagers, but it's even if you've got little ones, the best time to prepare for the teenage years is before they come. So it's good to know that in the teenage years, sometimes our children won't want to listen to us as much as they might listen to maybe another older family member or somebody else who might be able to be saying the same thing that as we want to say as parents, but they listen to them. So involving all the trusted adults that we can to help us, and particularly if we're feeling unwell ourselves, that's a really good thing to do.
Yeah. Alim is asking, how can we help our 3 to 6 months old child understand their emotions? So starting really young.
Yeah, should I start on that one? I think there's a chapter in the book about that family matters, and this is about how we learn all the really important things of life in the context of family. So we learn how to love and to be loved. We learn how to forgive and be forgiven. We learn how to deal with conflict. They all happen in the family. And so in those early days, there's a really important theory called attachment theory. And this is when a mother responds to a baby's needs. So the baby cries because maybe they're hungry or something else is wrong. And when the mother responds to the baby knows that they are lovable and that someone is going to meet that need. Or if they smile and the baby smiles back and the mother smiles again, and it creates this bond between them, and it actually affects how their brains develop. Our brains are incredible, and as well as in those early years developing that security of attachment, that sort of blueprint for life. All through our lives, our brains are changing, and as we were talking at the beginning about learning resilience, learning how to think positively, the actual neurons in the brain fire in different ways and change the pathways. So there's so much hope that we can really make a difference to our children by doing all these different things. But a great time to start is in those first 3 to 6 months.
Dr. Phillips, would you like to add something to that?
Yeah, I do totally agree with Catherine, and what I would like to highlight is that babies are born for relationship. So even from the moment a baby is delivered, you will find that they know their mums and their dad's voices, and although they may not focus well, they will look to the face of their parent. And so some people think that maybe, if I feed my baby and change my baby, that's all my baby needs. But as Catherine said, babies need us to respond to their signals. They might be crying, they might be fussing, they might be in pain. And so when we respond to that, and sometimes we talk, sometimes we do actions like pat them, this is all going to support the baby to develop its own sense of, as Catherine said, someone is there to care for me. I'm worth being cared for. And so this relationship building with mothers, fathers, grandparents, aunties, siblings is really important. And it's a building block, as Catherine said, for relationships later in life. And just to add another bit, this is why it's so important that we look after our mums when they're pregnant and having a baby, because very often, of course, the task of looking after a baby is up to mums. Sometimes other family members as well, sometimes nannies help, but it's so important to support our mothers.
Definitely. And to support mothers with children maybe with specific needs. This question has repeated more than once. There is a few people who are interested to ask if Sidra offers any mental health services for parents of children with special needs, which is so important. And I think, Catherine, you touch upon it slightly in your book as well. Dr. Phillips, would you like to take this question first?
Yes, I can. I think that So CIDRA has a child and adolescent mental health service. And so they certainly provide care and treatment for children who may have some mental health type difficulties. And part of the treatment also involving the parents and guiding and helping parents to figure out the best way to support their children. There is also a developmental paediatric service at CIDRA. Again, this is, for example, with children who may have developmental difficulties with professionals that will help them. So there are a variety of services, and also Hamad has services as well.
Catherine, would you like to reflect on this question as well?
Yes, so I do mention this in the book. I did toy with doing a specific chapter on this issue for parents of children with additional needs, but it was so complex and the needs were so different that we decided in the end not to do that, but just to refer to it, to acknowledge it, and to encourage parents to take the principles and work them out in their situation. But at Care for the Family, which is the charity I work for, we have a whole program that supports parents of children with additional needs. And I know one of the findings that we have found from that is quite often mental health issues have occurred in children with additional needs due to late diagnosis. And so I would say get all the supports that you can, and it sounds as if there is support available on the ground. And I think one of the things that the mums and the dads that come to us find most helpful is to know they're not alone. Just to know that there are other parents walking this journey. And sometimes we have peer-to-peer support, so we try and match people with a similar age child maybe, but they're a little bit further down the road with the same kind of issue. And just knowing some of the practical things they've been able to do to make life a bit easier for them, and just knowing that there are other people that understand that it isn't straightforward for them, I think can be a huge, huge help. So that would be what I would want to say.
Definitely, and I would also like to tell our viewers, speaking from the perspective of Qatar National Library, at our department, we've strived so much to provide programming for parents with children with additional needs. So please do reach out to ask about what we're offering. We try to offer something almost on a monthly basis. And as Catherine said, we do believe in the power of creating a community, especially when it comes to discussing issues or difficulties as families. What we face together is much easier faced together than alone. So I really encourage you to reach out. Maybe I can include my email in the chat later on, so we could at least tell you also what we're offering at Qatar National Library for you and your child. There is a mother who mentions that many of the students had to go back to take exams after the closures, and many felt stomach sick and failed some of the subjects. So how can we get them back stronger for the next year and increase their confidence after what seemed like a bumpy year for them?
Yeah, do you want me to answer that one first, or?
Yes, please.
Yeah. That's such a common question as well. And I imagine different communities will have had different policies from schools on this. But in this book there's a whole chapter called What Does Success Look Like, which looks at the whole issue of academic success. And also there's a whole chapter specifically about the pandemic and about schools and how we can work best with schools to help our children. But certainly in the chapter about what does success look like, I make a distinction between the very academic, studious children who maybe they're a little bit perfectionist and they want to succeed and they work really hard. And then the children who maybe academic things aren't their thing, they find it a bit harder work, and they have other gifts and other things that we can encourage them in. And so I think the secret in terms of their academic success is taking a step back in these times and realizing that this has been a very unusual year, and it's just a chapter in their lives. It's not the whole story. And spotting the things that they are good at and encouraging them in them, but having an eye most of all on the fact that the most important thing is their emotional well-being. And when we focus on that, then the other things should follow, but not putting so much academic pressure on them. I've recently, just yesterday, day before yesterday, I just wrote an article for a specific website that asked this question about the summer holidays and how should, I don't know what the situation is with summer holidays, but certainly in the UK, our children are about to break up from school for the summer holidays. And I was saying, find intentional ways for them to relax, to have fun, to just chill for a little bit and not be so worried about the academic things. And of course, we want them to catch up, and their schoolwork is really important. But if we focus on their well-being first, then I think we can encourage them in that as well.
Yeah, everything becomes easier if they're happier, right?
Absolutely.
Even with academics. Yeah, totally agree. Just trying to see what questions we can ask. So Marwa is asking about any advice to give for working mothers when it comes to juggling their professional lives as well as juggling the emotional well-being of themselves and their children.
Yeah, again, really good question. So I used to be a lawyer originally. So I qualified as a lawyer, had our 4 children, and so had a career break then. Then I came back to this role now, working for Care for the Family. So I've had a bit of experience of being a full-time mum at home. I have had time working full-time, working part-time, and volunteering. And do you know, none of them are easy, I've decided. I think when we're working full-time and trying to juggle work and children at home, we always feel guilty, and we think we're not giving our best at our work, or we're not giving our best at our children. But the chances are we probably are. So I would say, in terms of work, it obviously depends what the work is, but having conversations with our employer, or maybe we're self-employed, maybe we're working from home, but putting boundaries in place so our work time doesn't creep into family time. And for our children to know that when we are with them, that we can give them our full attention. So of course we can't give them our full attention when we're at work, but when we can be with them, letting them know that we want to be there, and to be there mentally as well as physically. We might be really tired when we come home from work, and it is exhausting to then do stories or bath time or whatever the things are we're doing, but actually to try and give our energy and get the help that if we can get help for some of the things that are in the home that need doing, that actually we have the money to pay for because we're working, then I would say get the help for the things that we find it, might find it difficult to do, if we can do that. Not everybody can do that. But lay down the guilt, because it comes with motherhood. And I think we're always, when I was at home, I was thinking, I did all that training and now that's all going out the window. Am I ever going to use that again? But giving our children the best of our day, if we can, I think is a good place to start.
You say something interesting in the book. I didn't forget the sentence. There should be a lot of quantity time before you get the quality time. Can you please explain that to our viewers? I think it's so important to realize.
So in the book, there are lots of chapters that deal with things that would be in many, many parenting courses. And then in addition, there are the things that really focus on well-being. So chapters that we've talked about resilience, about dealing with failure. One called It's Okay to Be Ordinary. And there is one all about time. And it's saying that many parents ask us, is it quality or is it quantity time? Which should we do? And the bad news is it's probably both, because I think we often have to put in that quantity time in order to get those quality moments. And this isn't to make people feel guilty, because if we're out at work and we have to work, we have to, but then fitting it in within our particular family, our family structure, our family day. So when ours were little, there's 4 of them and they're quite close together in age. And we found we didn't get much one-to-one time with them at all. And so we began a little routine where one of us would take one of them just out for breakfast on a Saturday morning. And this had been going on for a little bit of time, and they could choose which one of us they wanted to go with. And I discovered I hardly ever got to go. And so I think most of us as mums are a bit more insecure than we'd like to admit. And I thought, why do they always want to go with my husband and not with me? And so I asked the question. And of course, I discovered that when I took them out for breakfast, they had healthy food. They had, toast and orange juice and all that sort of thing. And when he took them out, he was letting them have chocolate cake and Coca-Cola and all sorts of things. And of course they wanted to be with him. So I had to change my ideas a bit. Of course, healthy eating is important, but on this moment, it was about finding those moments when they wanted to be with us. And very often it wouldn't last long, and we wouldn't talk about anything very significant. It would be about the latest friendship thing or football or something like that. But every now and then, even from when they were quite little, we'd get one of those moments that are often gone before we realize they're even there, when we could speak into their lives and just give them a little bit of advice or help them through a problem. But we had to create the time. So sometimes it is, putting that quantity time in place. And those little quality moments can be, just before, if we're reading them a story in the evening, before they go to sleep. And with older ones, it's often very inconvenient times late at night. And little ones, really good when you get those moments to try and give them that eye contact. Whereas teenagers definitely don't need eye contact, and they much prefer to be side by side so they don't feel like they're in a corner. But it's possible to do that in just the everyday things of family life. It doesn't need to be complicated.
Wonderful. It's amazing how time has flown by. We're almost done our hour. I really appreciate all the personal experiences being shared in the chat. I wish we had time for all the questions, but unfortunately we don't. It's been a pleasure, Catherine, Dr. Phyllis, to be speaking to both of you today about this very important topic. Dr. Phyllis, would you like to conclude with a few words?
Yeah, I think it's been a lovely hour spent, and really my words are to encourage relationship between parents and children, parents' relationships with each other and with the extended family and trusted friend. And I think that will do from me.
Wonderful. Catherine?
Yeah, I would really encourage parents just to take a step back and to be intentional about ways that they can build their children's emotional well-being. One of the practical suggestions in one of the action points I talk about is about praising character and praising effort, not just achievement. Of course, we want to celebrate when they do well, but if we can spot them doing something right, even when they're very little, and praise them when they've been kind or thoughtful, and making that praise really specific, that will go to build their emotional well-being. And I would just want to say that, as parents, we know our child best. We love them the most, and we've got everything to play for, and we really can have confidence in our parenting.
Amazing. So This book, I think we have a slide of where you could find it. If you guys could please display it for me. Inshallah, this book should be at QNL very soon because it's a newly published book. We haven't got it in our collection just yet, but it will be there very soon. If you would like to order the copy, you could please email the email displayed on the screen. We'll keep it up for a few seconds. Once again, it's been a pleasure moderating this session with Catherine and Dr. Phyllis, and I really hope to see everyone again in another parenting book club. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everyone. And while we're wrapping up, I just want to say thank you to everyone who's been showing engagement through the chat. We appreciated all of the stories, and I can't wait until we get to have these sessions live and in person and have, you know, a lot of time sharing stories and building our community. Of course, if you guys have your children registered in our family reading program, you'd know that a lot of the months are also dedicated to empathy and inclusion. We have affirmation cards for kids. We have books that help them, you know, to deal with their emotions, identify anger, sadness, kindness, empathy, etc. So that is, you know, and it also, you know, the good thing is that throughout the pandemic, we have been delivering the activity sheets and the books to the homes of our subscribers. And I just, you know, I know that a couple of you have received a copy of the book through our giveaway. So I do want to mention that people should, you know, keep an eye out for our giveaways, keep an eye out for the next book, and we will be working on making it available in more of our kits in our Mommy TV program and elsewhere. So thank you all. It was a pleasure, really. And thank you, Catherine and Dr. Fidis. Also, Stephanie, we have the publisher over here. And thank you to our moderator, Hind. Have a lovely week, everyone.